Hello everyone. In this lesson, we will create a new page that only lists events that took place in the past. Because as of this moment, on our home page we have upcoming events, and that won't show any events from the past. And even if we click on View All Events, this archive also will not show events from the past. However, you could imagine a situation where someone comes to our website and maybe they want to review a recap of the events that we've done in prior years. So let's go ahead and create a brand new page entirely and name it Past Events. So the first step is just to simply go into the admin, and you might have guessed it, let's hover over Pages in the sidebar and click on Add New. Let's give it a title of Past Events, and we can leave the main content field completely blank, and then let's click Publish or Save. Okay, now we can use this link here to preview that page that we just created. Okay, so this is what we would expect to see, right? We left the main content field blank, and we know that at this moment, the template file in our theme folder that's powering this screen is page.php. However, if we want to write custom code here to pull in a list of events that took place in the past, we are going to need a new unique special template file for this past events URL. So let me show you what we can do. In our text editor, within the root of our theme folder, I want you to create a brand new file. And the name of this new file is very important. I want you to name it page, and then a dash, and then the name of the slug for that page that we just created. If you can't remember what a slug is, right here on the edit screen, see this permalink? The bold part that's at the end is the slug for that page. So in this case, the slug is past-events. So back in our text editor, let's name this new file page-past-events.php. And then just as a test, I want you to type out hello 123 or just any test sentence, save it, and then if we go back to that past events URL and refresh, cool, we can see that that brand new template file is controlling this URL. Now we don't actually want to say hello 123, so let's delete that, and instead let's just copy and paste the contents from archive-event.php into this file and use it as a template or starting place. So within my archive event file, I'm just going to select the entire page and copy it into my clipboard, and then back in that brand new file, just paste it in. And up at the very top, let's change heading level 1 title. So instead of reading all events, let's set it to say past events, and let's change the subtitle to a recap of our past events. So let's save that. And this is fairly interesting. So this is the while loop part of the template that loops through any and all posts that are getting queried. Now because the URL that we are on is tied to a page, that one single past events page is the only item being queried, right? This is the default URL-based query. So back in our code, if we scroll down, right above this while loop, we just need to create a custom query that will load any event posts where the date is less than today's date. So you know the drill by now. When you want to create a custom query, the first step is to create a variable. We can name it whatever we want. Let's call it past events, and let's set it to equal a new instance of the WordPress class that's named WP_query. Okay, then remember within these parentheses here, we provide WordPress with an array of options. Let's drop down to a new line in between those parentheses. And what do we want to query for? Well, for our first parameter, let's say post type should equal event. Okay, now before we save this and take it for a spin right away, let's remember that our loop code should reference this object that we just created. Right? Because at the moment, this loop code is going to look at the current default URL-based query. But we want to use our past events object query. So let's modify this loop code. Right before have posts, we just want to look within this object. So right here, let's just say past events, and then to look inside an object in PHP, it's just dash greater than. And then let's do the same thing for the post. So right before that, just begin with our object, our query object, past events, look inside it, and then call the post. Cool, so let's save that and refresh. So that loaded all event posts, but we only want the ones where the event date is in the past. So let's go back to our code, and instead of manually typing out the perfect query here, I think we can save ourselves a lot of typing by just recycling the query from our home page. So right now, I want you to open up frontpage.php, and you'll remember that we wrote this custom query on the home page that only pulls in the 2 most recent events. So instead of typing all of this out again, let's just copy it all into our clipboard. Let's even be sure to grab the today variable up here at the top, and let's select all the way down to this semicolon, right before the while loop begins. Okay, so with that in my clipboard, back in our brand new page-past events template, let's just delete this past events variable we created a moment ago, and instead paste in our clipboard, and let's just rename the query to past events, right, equals a new instance of WP query, and now it's much faster to just modify this instead of typing it out again. So we can delete this first parameter, posts per page. We don't need to limit it to just 2. We are happy with the WordPress default of 10. Post type looks good. Meta key and order by look good. So does order ascending. Really, all we need to change is the meta query. So let's just say only posts where the event date, and then instead of greater than or equal to, let's just say are less than today's date. Okay, so if I save that and refresh, cool. We only see the one event that took place in the past. So that was simple enough. The real challenge of this lesson is getting pagination to work. Now we can't test pagination links unless we have multiple posts. So right now let's go create another event where the event date is in the past. So back in our admin, click on Add New Event. Let's give it a title of New Year 2016, paste in some dummy content, and most importantly, for the event date, let's set it all the way back to 2015, December 31st, right? So it's clearly in the past. Okay, so now if we go back and refresh this past event screen, there it is. Now let's go ahead and try to test out our pagination links. So in order to do that, you could imagine that we could set posts per page to 1, right? That would force pagination links down at the bottom. So let's add a new parameter and say posts per page equals 1. Be sure to include a comma at the end there. Let's save that. Okay, so we only see one post now, but we still don't see any pagination links to go to the next page of results. Even though in our template file down at the bottom, we do have echo paginate links. And this is because in general, WordPress pagination only works out of the box with the default queries that WordPress makes on its own that are tied to the current URL, right? So that's why the pagination links worked on the generic events archive screen, because in that case, we just manipulated the default query. But in this case, since we are on a /past events page URL, and we're relying on our own custom query, we're going to have to jump through a few hoops in order to get pagination working. So back in our text editor, down here towards the very bottom of our brand new template file, this paginate links function is trying to work with the default URL-based query. So in that case, there's nothing to paginate, right? WordPress thinks that we're just trying to pull in the one past events page. Remember that page where we left the main content field blank. So what we need to do is within these parentheses, we need to give this function information about our custom query. So let's give it an array and then drop down in between the parentheses. And we need to tell it how many pages of results there's going to be. right? So for example, if we had 30 total events and we had 10 per page, well, there would be 3 pages of results. So let's target the parameter named total, and let's set it to equal. Now we don't just want to hard code a number here and guess, right? To make it dynamic, what we can do is dig into our query object that we created up towards the top of this file. Remember, we named it past events. We just want to look within that object, dash greater than, for a property named max num pages. At this point, we've given this paginate links function all of the information that it needs. So now if we save this and refresh, cool, we do indeed see pagination links. But we are not done yet. Before I click on next, notice that the current event we see is New Year 2016. So when I click on next to go to page 2 of results, you would expect to see a different post, but we don't. We still see the same one. Even though up in the address bar we see /page2, that's not working yet. And that's because our custom query that we wrote is not paying attention to paged results yet. So to fix this, let's go back up to the top of our new template file, up here when we are creating our custom query, and we just need to add on a new parameter named paged. So this tells the custom query which page number of results it should be on. So again, for example, if we had 30 total posts and we were using 10 posts per page, there would be 3 pages worth of results, right? So we could hard code a value here. So for example, let's just hard code a value of 2 and save that. And when we refresh now, instead of New Year 2016, we do indeed see math meetup. But we don't want to hard code a number here, because now even if I go back to the first page of results, instead of seeing New Year 2016 again, we see math meetup. So the question becomes, instead of hard coding which page number of results this should be, the question is, how do we get the number that is up in the URL bar, right? If we see the number 2 at the end of the URL here, that's the number we want to use in our query. Well, to make things dynamic, back in our text editor, let's delete that hard-coded 2, and instead we can run a function named getQueryVar, and this function can be used to get all sorts of information about the current URL. In our case, we are interested in that number at the end, right? The paged result. So the property name that we want is just paged. And then just to play it safe, we can add on a comma and then a second argument, and we can say number 1. And what that's going to do is, even if you go back to the first result, the first page, see how it doesn't have a /page/1 like we saw for page 2? Well, this second argument is sort of the fallback or default number that will be used if WordPress can't find the paged number dynamically. Okay, so this highlighted code is saying, go out and get that number at the end of the paged URL, and if there isn't one to get, that probably just means we're on the first page of results. So use number 1. So if we save that, I'm on page 2 of results and we see math meetup, and if I use these pagination links to go back to page 1, perfect. We see New Year 2016. So that means pagination at this point in time is working. The moral of the story is that when you're using custom queries instead of relying on the default URL-based queries, there are a few hoops that you have to jump through, but it is possible to get pagination up and running. Now that we've tested out our pagination, we can safely go into our custom query and delete this posts per page equals 1. Cool. So now we can rest assured that once there are more than 10 past events, pagination will kick in and do its job. Now before we bring this lesson to a close, we should probably create a link that points towards this past events page somewhere else on our website, right? How are the visitors supposed to navigate to this page? So up in the header, let's click on Events to go to the Events archive. And I'm thinking down here at the bottom of this archive, we add a bit of text that reads, looking for a recap of past events, click here. So to add that, let's jump into our text editor and open up the archive event PHP file. We can scroll down to the very bottom right after this echo paginate links and the closing PHP tag, let's just add paragraph and say, looking for a recap of past events. Check out our past events archive. Okay, and then we probably want to wrap these words within an HTML link. So open up an A tag, close the A tag. Let's give it an href attribute. Now, if your sandbox development website lives at the root of a domain, you could just say /past events. But if you're using MAMP or XAMPP, sometimes your WordPress site lives within a subdirectory of a domain. So for the href, what I like to do, just to be safe, is drop into PHP and echo out the results of a function named site URL. And then within those parentheses, we can just say /past events. And this function will generate an absolute URL based on the ending portion that we provided. So let's save that. Here it is. Now this will get the job done, but we can improve the visual styling, right? There should probably be more of a vertical gap here. So back in our code, right above that new paragraph, let's create an HTML horizontal rule element, and let's give it a class of section break, just for a bit of CSS styling. Cool, so that creates a subtle border and more vertical spacing. And now if we actually click on this link to test it out, perfect. But I do notice one thing we can fix. Up in the header navigation, the events link should be lit up as yellow because we are on the past events page. So to fix that header detail, let's jump into our text editor and open header.php. Here's our navigation menu. Let's scroll down a bit to find the events link. So here's the list item and link for events. You can see we've already got one conditional check. So we're saying if the post type of the default URL-based query is event, then echo out a class that will make the link yellow. So on the past events page, this will not evaluate to true because the default query on this URL is just this one single page named past events. So back in our code, what we can do, right after this equal event, let's just say or, and then call a function named isPage, and for the argument, past events. Okay, so if this evaluates to true, or if this evaluates to true, go ahead and light the link up as yellow. So we're on the past events page and it lights up, perfect. And if we go back to the main events archive, it still lights up. That's going to bring this lesson to a close. In our next lesson, we will completely change gears and create a brand new post type for programs. Each program post will be a major, like math or biology or history. And the fun part is that we're going to learn how to create relationships between events and programs. Learning how to create relationships from one post to another is one of the most powerful components of WordPress. This is where things are going to speed up a bit. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's keep it rolling, and I will see you then.